In this video, we're going to walk through AWS's provided solution for blue-green deployments to AWS Elastic Beanstalk on the AWS cloud, which uses AWS Code Pipeline for deploying to Elastic Beanstalk environments. This lab will be one of several examples of how many different AWS services can interact with each other to provide one automated, easy-to-use solution. When an application is developed and deployed to an AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment, having two separate but identical environments, blue and green, increases availability and reduces risk. In the AWS provided quick start that we're going to follow, the blue environment is the production environment that normally handles live traffic. The CI/CD pipeline architecture creates a clone of the live Elastic Beanstalk environment, which we'll call the green environment. The pipeline then swaps the URLs between the two environments. While Code Pipeline deploys application code to the original environment and testing and maintenance takes place, the temporary clone environment handles the live traffic. Once deployment to the blue environment is successful and code review and code testing are done, the pipeline again swaps the URLs between the green and blue environments. The blue environment once again starts serving the live traffic, and the pipeline terminates the green environment. I highly encourage you to follow along with this lab, and you can do that by going to the Quick Start Guide on the URL on this page. Just a few pages down, you'll see a large button that says Deploy Solution, and if you click that, it'll open up your CloudFormation page in your AWS console with a pre-populated CloudFormation template link. Before we build that solution though, let's take a moment to talk about exactly what we're going to be building. The first element is a code pipeline that is triggered when an Amazon S3 bucket is uploaded with a new version of the application package that is deployed to the AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment. Next, there are AWS Lambda functions to clone the blue environment as the green environment, to swap the URLs, and to terminate the green environment when deployment and testing for the blue environment are complete. After that, there are AWS code build projects to perform the initial URL swap between the blue and green environments and to test the deployment of the blue environment. If an existing Elastic Beanstalk environment and the application where it exists is not provided, the Quick Start will create a sample environment for us. The solution will also provide AWS identity and access management roles for the Lambda functions, code build projects, code pipeline, and service role for the Elastic Beanstalk sample application. And finally, the solution will deploy separate Amazon S3 buckets for the code pipeline artifact store, the Lambda function assets, and the code build assets. You can have additional S3 bucket for storing the zip package that contains application code for the Elastic Beanstalk deployment, but we're going to rely on the solution to provide that. Let's take a moment to look at this diagram and see exactly what it means. First, you'll notice two identical environments, the blue and the green. Both are Elastic Beanstalk environments behind an Elastic Load Balancer with an autoscaling group. The next important component is the S3 bucket with the application artifact. And the solution gives us two ways to upload to this bucket. We can either set up an optional Git repository, or we can rely on the solution provided zip package. That's the option we're going to go with for this video. Once Code Pipeline detects a change in the object in that S3 bucket, the Code Pipeline will trigger, and the first stage is the source stage. In the source stage, Code Pipeline is going to grab the object from the S3 bucket and pass it to the next stage. In the next stage, which is called the invoke stage, AWS Lambda is going to clone the blue environment to the green environment. After this, manual approval is required through a subscription to an Amazon SNS topic, so we'll have to provide an email address for that approval email to be sent. In the next stage, which is an AWS Code Build stage, AWS Code Build is going to swap the URL between the blue environment and the green environment after the green environment is ready. That means live traffic will be serving the green environment instead of the blue environment. In the next stage, which is the deploy stage, Elastic Beanstalk is going to deploy the updated object from the bucket to the blue environment. After that, AWS Code Build we'll test the blue environment to make sure that the latest deployment was successful. And if the test is successful, then the very last stage is the invoke stage, where a Lambda function is going to re-swap the URL between the green and the blue environment, and then terminate the green environment, so that the tested and updated environment is once again the blue environment. If that all makes sense, then let's switch to the solution I provided in the URL on the previous slide. And just a few pages down, you're going to see a button that says Launch Quick Start. Once again, this is going to open our CloudFormation page with a pre-configured template link already ready for us. So let's use the provided template URL and get started. There are a few parameters we're going to have to enter. The stack name is fine as it is, so we're going to leave that alone. The Beanstalk source stage S3 bucket is optional, and that's the S3 bucket for the source stage of the pipeline that AWS Code Pipeline uses to pull the application package. If we decide to disable Git integration by leaving this parameter blank and setting Git to S3 integration to false, then a bucket will be created. If a bucket name is provided, that will be the bucket that Code Pipeline will look into to get the application source package. If we decide to integrate Git and set the Git to S3 integration parameter to true, then a new bucket will be created with this name to put the source package. However, like I said, we're not going to integrate Git for this demo. So we're going to leave this field blank. The next field is the Beanstalk source stage S3 bucket key. This is the path to the Elastic Beanstalk application source package in zip format that will trigger the source stage in the pipeline. If the Git to S3 integration parameter is set to true, this parameter is the S3 bucket key where the Git webhook will place the zip file as input to the source stage in the pipeline. To keep things simple, we'll just call this app.zip. Next is an optional field, the existing blue environment name. If we already have an Elastic Beanstalk environment set up, then we could put the name of that environment here. However, we're going to use the solution provided, so we're going to leave this value blank and let the solution create a sample PHP environment for us. Similarly, if we had an existing blue environment, then we'd also need to provide the existing Beanstalk application name. However, once again, we're going to rely on the solution, so we're going to leave this one blank. The green environment name is fine how it is. And we'll need to enter an admin email address. Once again, this is for manual approval through the SNS topic that the solution provides for us. We'll need to approve the pipeline before it can go on to switch between green and blue. Now, once again, we're not going to integrate Git, so we can skip all of the Git parameters here. However, if you want to use this solution in your company, then this is where you would set the Git integration to true, and then provide a custom domain name if you want, and then finally provide an API secret to integrate GitHub or GitLab. Once again though, we're going to leave this blank and move on to the next field, which is the Quick Start S3 bucket name, or the S3 bucket name for the Quick Start assets. The default is fine here. We're also fine with the default Quick Start S3 key prefix, so let's hit next. On this page, again, because we're relying completely on the solution, we're going to leave everything as default. And then finally on the review page, let's acknowledge that we're going to create IAM resources and hit create. And just a quick note while this is creating, this is going to deploy a lot of resources. So once we're done with the solution here, I definitely recommend that you roll back and delete this stack so that you don't spend more than you need to. That being said, this deployment is going to take a moment, so I'm going to place this video on a brief pause and we'll be right back with you. And just as a quick note, it looks like as of the time of this recording, the provided solution is having a little bit of trouble creating an example application in Beanstalk for you if you don't provide one. So I've created a sample application and I've given the solution the environment name and the application name. So I'm going to restart the deployment process here. And while that's creating, I'm going to go over to my Beanstalk, and under Application Versions, I'm going to search for Sample Application, and I'm going to grab the zip of the project that I ran, which is a node.js file. That way, once it's time to trigger the pipeline, I'll be able to upload that zip to the S3 bucket. So back in CloudFormation, once again, this is going to take a moment, so I'm going to place this video on a brief pause. And it looks like that CloudFormation template is finished deploying, so let's take a look at all of the resources it deployed. First, in the main CloudFormation stack, under outputs, it looks like we have a Beanstalk source bucket name, a green environment name, a code pipeline name, and a blue environment name. So obviously the Beanstalk source bucket is the bucket that we're going to upload our package to trigger the code pipeline. The green environment name is the name of the environment that the solution is going to deploy for us before testing the blue environment. The code pipeline name is the name of the code pipeline that the solution created for us, which we'll see in just a moment. And finally, the blue environment name is the name of the environment that I created before passing it to the CloudFormation solution. In the first nested stack, we have a bucket for Lambda zips, which is the bucket that contains the zip files for all of the Lambda packages that this solution uses. We also have a bucket for the code pipeline artifacts, and a bucket for the Beanstalk source code. Looks like there aren't any outputs in the last nested stack, so let's move on to S3. Here we can see that the solution created 3 buckets. The first is the Lambda zips bucket that contains all of the source code for the Lambda packages that got deployed for the solution. The second is the Beanstalk source bucket, and this one is empty because this is where we're going to deploy our package to trigger the code pipeline. And finally, we have the code pipeline artifacts bucket, which is where code pipeline and code build are going to deploy their artifacts as part of the code pipeline. Next we have the code pipeline itself, and of course it failed on creation because we haven't yet uploaded the deployment package. So of course, once we upload that package, this pipeline is going to trigger, but in the meantime, let's go through each of these steps and confirm again what they're going to do for us. Once again, in the source stage, code pipeline is going to pull the uploaded configuration package from S3 and then pass that to the next stage. The next stage is the invoke stage, where Lambda is going to create the clone of the blue environment and call it the green environment. After that, we're going to go to a manual approval stage where an email is going to get sent through an SNS topic and where we'll need to approve that before it'll proceed in the pipeline. After we approve that pipeline stage through the SNS topic, then the next stage will be the build stage, where AWS Code Build will swap the URL between blue and green after green is ready. After that, we have the deploy stage, where Elastic Beanstalk will deploy to the blue environment. Once the environment has been deployed to, the next stage is a test stage, where Code Build will test the blue environment to make sure the latest deployment is successful. And finally, the last stage is a Lambda invoke stage, where Lambda will re-swap the URL between the green and blue environment and then terminate the green environment. Let's check out Code Build. And of course, we see both Code Build projects here, one to swap the URLs between the blue and green environments, and the other that will test the build in the blue environment after it's been deployed to with the new deployment artifact. Next are the Lambda functions that the solution deployed, and once again, these are going to perform a few different functions. Initially, they're going to create the clone of the blue environment and call it the green environment. They're also going to handle the resources inside some of the S3 buckets, and then when the time comes, they'll re-swap the URL between green and blue and then terminate the green environment. And finally, we have the SNS topic. Now, there was a little typo on my part initially when launching the solution, so I've added another email address that's still pending confirmation. If I check my email, I'll see that I got the confirmation email, so I'll confirm that now. And when I go back to my subscriptions, I see that the pending subscription has been confirmed. With that being said, it's time to trigger this code pipeline by uploading the deployment package to the S3 bucket. So let's go back to S3, go to the source bucket, and let's upload our app.zip file. I've got mine here, so I'm going to drag and drop, and then just click through to upload. With that being said, it's time to trigger this code pipeline by uploading our package to the source bucket. So back in S3, let's click on the source bucket and click upload. I have my app.zip file here, so I'll drag and drop, and then I'll click through to upload the file. There it is. So let's go back to code pipeline and see if that triggered the build. And there it is. It looks like the code pipeline has been triggered. So while this is running, I'm not going to pause this video. So there might be some empty space while we wait for certain stages, but I do want to be able to provide live commentary. So I'm just going to mute out for now and then comment when I need to say something. So it looks like the source stage has succeeded, and of course the next step is Lambda is going to clone the blue environment and call that the green environment. So we should be able to go to our Elastic Beanstalk and see that a green environment is now being cloned from the blue environment. While it's doing that, let's go ahead and load up the blue environment's URL just to make sure that it's currently running. We'll grab that. And it is running right now. So what we're going to look out for is once the environment has been cloned and the URL has been swapped, that means the green environment is serving traffic. So after that happens, we want to go back to the URL and make sure that it's still working. If it does, that means the green environment was cloned successfully. Before that happens, let's go ahead and approve that through our email. And there's the email, so let's click on that to approve it. And let's review and approve. That should trigger the URL swap, after which we'll be able to test the endpoint and make sure it's still working. And now we're in the swap URL stage, which means after this is successful, we will have deployed the URL to the green environment. There we go. The swap URL code build has succeeded, which means the URL is now pointing to the green environment. So if the green environment is a successful clone of the blue environment, then when I reload the page, it should load just fine, and it does. There we go. So the green environment is currently serving our live traffic during the next stage of the code pipeline, which is the deployment to the blue environment. And once again, what's getting deployed to the blue environment is the updated package that I uploaded to S3. So it looks like we've successfully deployed to the blue environment, which means code build is now testing the blue environment. Let's see what that looks like in code build. And that was a very fast test. It looks like it's already completed and it did succeed. So let's hop back to code pipeline and wait for that to update. Alright, so it looks like we're on the last step here. What's happening, of course, is that we're switching the URL back from the green environment to the blue environment. And then once that happens, we should be able to go back to our URL and then confirm one more time that the new and updated blue environment is working once more. There we go. Looks like the entire code pipeline has succeeded, which means once again, the URL is pointing back to the blue environment. Let's test that out. And it sure is. Looks like we reloaded and we are still successfully serving our Node.js application. And that'll wrap it up for our video on blue-green deployments to AWS Elastic Beanstalk in the cloud using AWS's provided solution with Code Pipeline. I hope that made sense, and I hope you were able to follow along, and if all of that's good, then feel free to move on.